All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Conscience, and you are listening to the Conscience Hip Hop Podcast. We are on episode 6, and I have a special guest with me, someone who is in the arts in a different fashion than you've seen before. We've got Dominic Mendoza in the house. He's an audio engineer out here in Arizona. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on, Conscience? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing real good. We're staying out of this rain for some random reason. It is raining cats and dogs out here, so we're just kicking it. For those of you who don't know, we're actually in the lab of Mendoza, so we're just kicking it at his crib. So we're doing all this real live and direct, nice quality for you guys, so I'm excited to get it going. Now, before we get into everything, let's just kick it off with a quick intro. Tell the people who you are, what you do, and what some of your passions are.
Hey, I'm Dominic Mendoza. I am an audio engineer. I love mixing, mastering, learning about audio, listening to music. I just love music in general and studying it. And I also fell in love with baseball when I was a little kid. And that's just some of the passions that I have.
Okay, now let's just talk a little bit about kind of how that all divides up. So did you always, it sounds like you started a little bit, with your love for baseball, and then music kind of somehow fell in there as far as the engineering part of it. So kind of break that down. Do you still watch baseball? When did it change? When did the seesaw kind of change for you on that?
So I played baseball my whole life until I was 21, 22. Okay. I started when I was like a little kid. My dad actually played AAA baseball, so it's been in my family since the beginning. And I just remember growing up and loving the game, and that's all I wanted to do. And I actually had the opportunity after high school to go play JUCO for about 3 years. I redshirted 1 year, and and I even to this day, like, I'll go out there and I'll play like slow pitch just to go out there and have fun because I love it so much.
Dope. Okay, so you have this passion for baseball and stuff like that. Where did the music fall into play?
Actually, music didn't fall into play until about 2009.
Okay. How old were you?
I was 19.
Okay.
Yep, 19 years old, man. So I never even knew about music or like had an interest in music until I just met some people that were doing music, and I just got intrigued by it, and ever since then just started growing.
That's what's up. So was this a hip hop crowd, or what kind of music did they do?
Yeah, it was a hip hop crowd. I met up with this guy from Dallas. He actually lived in the same dorm room as me. And he would always freestyle rap, and like he would always show me his projects that he was coming out. And I used to get together with some of my friends that were there in the dorm rooms, and we used to just throw on beats and try to rap. And well, we really were horrible, but
sounds like in college, just like I remember so many times just. The freestyle is just something that happens, It's either some dudes trying to get a freestyle on or some girls trying to sing and do their little high school renditions and whatnot. So yeah, that's hilarious. You see that a lot in sports too. Like before a game, everybody rallies up behind a beat and they might do a rap or some kind of chant or anthem. So I'm sure you've got a few of those stories in the books.
Oh yeah, we've had some of those. We had a actual baseball ritual going on. In high school, we would get in a circle and be like, ha, ha, ha. And like me and my homie would do a handshake in the middle and like fall out into it, and we'd go all crazy.
That's something a lot of cats don't remember is like, not quite like step team stuff, but like anthems and getting your team riled up and handshakes and stomps and different rituals and stuff in sports. I mean, you kind of see it now too, but more so back in the day, man. We used to be almost like not sororities. What's the dudes? It used to be real like fraternity like we used to go in and have a whole block step that we could do for like an hour and a half to represent our team or where we're from and stuff. But that's really dope, man. So with the hip hop influence and stuff, so you were kind of, I would say, musical is a safe way to kind of categorize that. But at what point in time did it click for you, like, yo, I love music so much that I want to get into the science of it and see how it's created and create my own stuff?
So basically what happened was I started growing an interest for music, and 1 year for my birthday, my brother, who actually lives in LA, he saw that I was piquing an interest in this music stuff. So he just basically invested and said, hey, why not? And so for my birthday one year, he actually got me Fruity Loops. And I fell in love with it. I started learning, and I started playing with that and toying with that. And like, I just kept going after it and like trying to learn and understand what was happening and understand music. And then I would make these whack beats, and I used to think that they were so dope.
Throw a sample down, just add a kick and a snare, and just like, thought it was your own beat.
Like hitting the keys like ding 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 ding.
That's funny.
Yeah, but you know, like I always had support in that. And when I was getting ready to graduate junior college, it was like, all right, I'm not gonna play baseball anymore. Like, it's time to hang up my cleats. So what's next?
Okay.
And the only thing I kept hearing was music, 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 music. And at this time, I had been starting my relationship with God. And so I was like, music, music, music. So I brought it to the table with my mom, and she's always been super supportive. But I was like, dang, music? Like, she's gonna be like, music, really?
Yeah.
And no, I told her, I was like, I think music is what I want to do, and she supported me 100%. So shout out to my moms, I love her to death.
Word.
And yeah, I moved out here and started studying hard.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. So there's a lot of stuff going on in there. I'm gonna try to remember and unpack all of it. So as far as the music side of it, just to break down, you know, my audience is really diverse. You know, I got kids who listen to my show. I got old fogies who don't even know half the stuff I'm talking about. I got a lot of dudes from the hip hop context, the church context. So we got to break stuff down. So when Mendoza says I had Fruity Loops, my boy got me Fruity Loops. That does not mean he picked up a bowl. You know, he went to Walgreens, he got a box of cereal, and he tried cereal for his first time. There's a software out, you know, it's basically, there's always a bootleg version of something or a Kickstarter or something. You know, you got a book, reading for dummies, doing stuff, you know. Fruity Loops is basically like the 101, you know, cost-effective way as a young guy to produce beats. It was a software that you could, you know, eventually you could start recording on it and doing a lot more dynamic stuff on it. But I believe it started off as a strictly a beat maker, like a loop sequencer and stuff like that. And so he had that, and he was working on specifically beats. I remember when Fruity Loops first came out. I don't remember if I had the first one, but I had Fruity Loops 3. And then they started doing like 3.2, 3.4. 4, and then 5, and then I think we're at like what, 11 or 12 now?
Yeah, like 12, I think.
Yeah, so like I was probably 11 or 12 when I heard about Fruity Loops, which is probably a few years after it first started coming out. And you know, they marketed it almost like a techno DJ kind of. You know, they weren't giving you like hip hop samples, and if it was like some chick like "Stomp your feet, baby," you know, or like "It's time to jam with the beat," you know. So like, you know, I don't know how that started coming across dudes to translate that into being a thing where you made hip hop beats, but I remember when I found it, it was super ill, and then my brother. Who actually raps and produced for me a long time. He's actually an audio engineer as well. He started getting real into it, but he had record players, and that back then they started coming out with the USB record players where you could literally from a CD or vinyl stream that into the computer, and then they had programs like SoundForge and stuff that would auto chop all your samples and stuff, and then you start learning how to upload loops and samples into Fruity Loops and go on eBay and see all these drum kits and all that jazz. So I mean, I was really heavy into the Fruity Loops scene and making beats, and it's addicting.
Oh yeah,
you know, because as a young guy being able to say, yo, I make fresh beats from my room, like I still to this day probably have like 1,000 beats from Fruity Loops, and only reason I made them was just because it was something to do back in the day.
Yeah.
But so you started making beats, and that's just based off how your family kind of invested into you, and that's just where you kind of took off. Now, you know, so we unpack that, but let's talk about the geographics to all this. So you said you were in Dallas for college, right?
No, I met a guy from Dallas, but actually I lived in a place called Las Vegas, New Mexico.
Okay, so Las Vegas, New Mexico. So he's not hallucinating. He's not on drugs. He wasn't in Las Vegas feeling like he was in New Mexico.
No. There's a literal place called Las Vegas, New Mexico.
How many people live there? Shout out your hood, man. Shout out your hood.
Man, I think there was more people that lived on campus than in the town, but
it's funny. Okay, so you met a friend who was in Dallas. You're originally from New Mexico.
Yeah, I'm originally from a small town called Gallup, New Mexico. So I moved 4 hours away to Las Vegas, New Mexico, and one of the football players there that was from Dallas lived in the same dorm room as me.
Okay.
And then that's how I kind of linked up with him, and he was like an older cat. So
when you got introduced to the music, as far as being invested in by your family, were you already in Arizona by then, or were you still in New Mexico?
Still in New Mexico.
Okay. So you're in New Mexico, you're a teenager, you're getting out of high school. Somewhere in the midst, you picked up Fruity Loops, started hammering down on the beats. Explain to us kind of where that led you into the audio engineering, and when did you move and why and all that.
So basically that kind of just laid down the foundation, and then like I said, when I was like, all right, what's next after junior college, I found a school, and it was called Collins College, and it's out here in Arizona. It actually, unfortunately, it closed down like last year, but I was able to receive my bachelor's degree and get all that stuff done and make sure it's legit and good to go for my future. But I came out here, I started to dig in, study, and it just continued to grow, and my passion and my love for it was like out the roof. So, and I was also working inside the school. They had like a $500,000 studio, like
wow,
off the chain, like SSL consoles, like preamps, best mics. Like I was in love, man, and I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And that just struck my passion. And before that, so when I met that guy in Dallas, like, and I told you I started freestyle and stuff, I had also started dibbling and dabbling into writing. So and those were kind of like prayers. I started writing more of prayers.
Okay.
Because like I was a Catholic my whole life. Mm-hmm. So in that moment in my life, I started writing prayers and like implementing God in them and stuff. You know, I had
like talking to God or talking about
talking to God.
Okay.
Yeah. And
probably a good place to start.
Very much so. but definitely I had some horrible songs in there that were ungodly.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm like, man, this is just not me.
Yeah. It's amazing like how attractive spirituality is for young cats that have questions about life. Mm-hmm. You don't see a guy, well, I take that back. Sometimes you kind of hear some cats like talking about history or like Egyptians and like as far as investigating like who we are, why we're here. I always think two of the biggest questions that someone can ask themselves in their life is why are they here? And you know, what's the life purpose? And then two, where are you going? Like, does all of that purpose have a climax on earth and then it's all just over? I always, as far as like when it comes to preaching the gospel or just seeing where cats are mentally and where their motives are, I always ask those two questions, like, yo, like, what are you living your life for? Like, what do you think it all adds up to? Where's that going for you, and how do you approach that? And then two, like, okay, now based off of what you just told me you believe in as far as your life purpose, do you believe that it has a stopping point? And if so, like, how does that make you feel? Like the idea of living and stacking up all this gain, whether it's knowledge or a good family or wealth or whatever, do you believe that it stops there? And that always leads me to some really good conversations. But in the hip-hop community, especially for cats who are struggling to either get wise or understand their surroundings or even understand God better, it's funny how that's kind of always how it ends up, is turning to cats looking at God and asking a lot of questions, or looking at their communities and asking questions like, you know, why are things the way that they are? So I think that's always a really dope place to be. But traditionally for me growing up, I don't know if this is the same for you, but like we didn't have a culture of cats doing stuff like that. So like for me as a rapper, there's always like 3 to 5, maybe 5 to 10 cats who would be on that, and then everybody else would be like, yo man, like yo, eat your lunch and play your sports, and you know, like no one can even grasp that that's even an important important things to be thinking through. So like, what do you think made you, what drew you to like talking to God about life questions? Like, what were some of your life questions growing up?
Well, so basically, my whole life I had believed, I had faith. So it started with a little bit of faith, and I would go to church ritually, and religiously, just going to church and just sitting in there, not leaving changed or anything. So in 2009, I actually went home on a trip. I went back home for Christmas break, and my father, he ended up passing away, like during that Christmas break. In December.
What was it? If you don't mind me asking, what was that due to?
We honestly don't know. Like, just woke up one morning and he just was gone, man.
Dang, man.
It was a life changer. Before that, I had already been asking questions to God, talking to him. And that, it just seemed to like hit me upside the head even more. Like, dang.
Yeah. What's going, like, what is this life about?
Yeah, and I felt like God had really just, like, I was just a crystal ball, and he just got me and just threw me down, and just I shattered all over the place.
Yeah. And
I didn't know what to do, where to go, anything. I was just very broken and confused, you know, and I'm trying to become a man.
Yeah.
Like, and I just lost my father figure.
Right.
And all kinds of mess.
That's a lot for a young guy to handle.
Oh, for sure. And then even on top of that, then afterwards, I had to go back to school. So my father got buried in January.
In New Mexico?
In New Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, in Gallup, the place that I'm originally from.
Okay.
And I knew, because I just know my dad, and I knew that if I didn't go back to school, he would be so mad at me. So I was like, I have to go back. So
you were questioning even going back to school? Just because you
No, I never once questioned going back,
you had
because
your dad
I
in the
already
back of your
knew,
head. You're like, okay.
Like, my dad would be so mad at me if I didn't go.
So you were you were struggling with what had happened, but at the same time you had this hunch like, yo, I gotta go back to school. I gotta get it together. Yeah.
Yep. And I just kept writing, because I had a lot of questions to God, like, why is this happening? Like, what do I need to do? Like, what direction are you taking me?
Yeah.
I'm so confused. And I would try to cope with it. Like, even still, I was talking to God, I would try to cope with it by just like smoking a lot of weed. And I would just get like too gone, and my mind would start like asking millions of questions about God.
Sure.
And like, I would be like basically convicted in my sin, but I didn't know it at the time. But it was like a way for me to like, I was like constantly talking to God.
Sure.
Like, what's going on, God?
Yeah. Like, kind of band-aiding the issue, but at the same time still the therapy
Question
of it was, you weren't
approaching God's.
Yeah, you still didn't have a rebellious heart as far as figuring out who God was, but you still had some attachments to some things.
Exactly.
Gotcha. So okay, so let's there's a lot going on there. So you start going back to school. Did you start doing your other schooling in New Mexico and then come here, or when you had that hunch that you needed to go to finish school, that's when you moved here?
No, I was actually still doing my regular schooling. I was getting the basics out the way, and I was doing
now, by regular schooling, high school or like associates
junior college.
Junior college. Okay,
correct.
So first couple years of college.
Yeah, and then actually my third year, I started getting into it so much that I took a class at the university, because I went to a junior college, and then in the same vicinity was a university there.
Okay.
And so I took a class at the university that had like a little like Pro Tools rig set up in there. Like, it was just like an audio class.
Yeah.
Because I really liked it. Like, it had nothing to do with what I was trying to do, but I just loved it so much I wanted to try it.
Yeah.
So
that's what's up. Now there's two other parts of that I want to kind of break down. So one is, what are the major differences, if any, that you saw between New Mexico when you eventually transitioned and moved out here to Arizona?
Oh man.
Because they're both deserts, right?
Not really.
Is New Mexico really?
New Mexico
poppin'?
is desert-y.
Okay.
But like, it snows there, and it gets cold, and
really?
It's windy, and like, yeah, like a lot of people be like, oh, it's like the same in New Mexico as it is in Arizona. It's like, no, like it's super cold over there sometimes, and like it snows and you have snow days and all that stuff. So
so the weather was a big difference.
Weather, I've always, because being involved with baseball so much, I had always been traveling, doing tournaments and all this, so I would always come to Arizona. My brother, who is my half brother, he actually lived out here, graduated from ASU, all that stuff. So I had encounters with Arizona a lot, and I just really fell in love with it, and I fell in love with like the weather, even though it's like hot for so long.
Yeah.
I was like, man, to do stuff all year round, like,
yeah,
I love that part, because like you can't do that in New Mexico. Another part would probably be the traffic, and it's funny because when I first moved out here, I had a roommate, and I was like, oh, hey, where's the new, or where's Walmart, or how far is Walmart? He's like, oh, it's just down the street. And so like in New Mexico, like down the street's like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then so when I'm driving for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and that's down the street, that was like, what? That's down the street?
Yeah, that's funny. So you had a lot more gas tanks to fill up.
Oh yeah.
People said down the street. That's funny.
Definitely.
Dope, man. Okay. So now you also said you made beats when you first started getting into music. What would you say, let's talk a little bit about influences. So like when you first started making your beats, how would you characterize them as far as genre? And did you always kind of have like the hip hop mindset, or, you know, what were some of your early influences growing up, musical or non-musical?
So musically, I would say like when I was in high school and stuff, I would listen to a lot of like Lil Wayne.
Okay.
And like Southern music, like
Hot Boys Lil Wayne, or like solo career Lil Wayne?
Both.
Okay.
But more of solo career. But I would still hop into that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I would listen to a lot of Southern guys. Like people I've never really heard of. Like this guy's name is Charlie Boy, and I used to listen like Camilla Terry Man, and all those guys, like Super South, Mike Jones. I don't know how, but the influence came in to New Mexico, and like we was walking like tall tees and Air Force Ones for like.
That's what's up. Any Outcasts in there?
No, not very much Outkast.
Okay, so super Southern.
There was Outkast for sure, but it wasn't like, we weren't like bobbing our heads.
Yeah, you weren't bumping no Outkast down the street.
Exactly.
Save the Outkast for when you light an incense or something.
Yeah. And then a big influence that I think that I didn't really notice at the time until like now would be like the Temptations, Motown, and stuff like that, because my dad would always rock out to all that stuff.
Okay.
And I just remember being a kid and just like putting like Papa Was a Rolling Stone on repeat, because that front intro is just nasty. Like even to this day,
you don't catch stuff like that anymore on the radio.
Oh no, man! Like those live violins and horns. Bass line, doom.
That's what's up, man.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, a lot of the recordings back then I would say, like, if there's any distinct difference between music now from all genres as to the past, is just less layers nowadays, you know. Most rap records might have like 5 to 10 vocal tracks, and if they have a bunch, it's just because they have to punch in because they can barely breathe to record their takes. It's not actually because there's any kind of additional layering and stuff like that. But and just the live element now with the whole electronic movement, where a lot of hardware is turning into software, and you know, it's just leaving the room for less. I would say you don't have to be as punctual as a live musician as much anymore. You can kind of just find what sounds good to be really excellent. And I think that's the challenge for a lot of musicians today, especially in hip hop, is just not only educating yourself about music from the past and where hip hop has come from, but also just not following the urge to capitalize on how easy it is to make beats and rhymes. It's so easy to have some cool samples and stuff and to come up with some great music, but it seemingly be almost like 95% not you, and you just put a little splash on it, and now all of a sudden it's yours, and you're changing the game. But somebody else had like a 12-man band in the studio to record a lot of the samples you're using, or you know what I'm saying, or might have played it live, and you've got the convenience of the MIDI controller and stuff like that. So I think when it comes to influence, hip hop as a genre, the beats are getting really elevated. I think if you really do your research out there, like hip hop beats have really elevated, and I always bring this up, but like hip hop's a lot like jazz in that it's breaking up into all these different subgenres right now. So I mean, you just have a lot of elevation because the software and the hardware is elevating to a high level. So the beat makers are almost dictating how well the genres are elevating. Now, if we can just get the lyricism and the singing and all that stuff to get to the same level, I think we would have some really powerful music. And you do see little snippets of it here and there, because there is good music out there. It's just, I think there's an oversaturation on all of our social networks, so that sometimes it's easy to think like, oh, the genre's not elevating or it's all whack. But the difference is just you really got to do your homework these days to really find cats who are elevating the craft. But so you have a few musical influences in there. Anything else that kind of stands out to you outside of music, maybe?
Outside of music, I would say, because in past times when I've like showed other people some of the beats that I have made, I don't know where the influence came from, but it's like more theatrical. Like that could be in a movie. Like I've heard that multiple times.
Okay.
Like scores and stuff like that. I don't know where that came from, but dope.
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool too, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not one to hear things and like, all right, I already hear the beat in my head. I know exactly what I want in it. Like I'm more of one to sit down, play with the stuff, and just let everything flow together. What feels right at the moment.
Sure. Yeah, I can identify in a lot of the producers that I've seen, even myself when I used to make beats. I kind of just plug and play a lot of stuff and see what it moves. And I would say the producer nowadays is more I call them spin-offs, where you take an idea and you spin it off into something that's unique to yourself. You might replay something out, or a lot more ideas driven. But now you said you went to Collins College.
Yeah, it's called Collins
for your musical stuff. For your engineering. Now, at some point you said you were rapping at first, writing prayers to God and stuff. Obviously, do you still rap nowadays?
I still write every now and then. It's not as prominent in my life as much as it was like back in the day. But
would you ever rap again?
For fun, yes.
Okay.
To try to be a rapper, nah, I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just not my lane.
Okay, so it was more so like a hobby at one point.
Yeah. It was honestly, man, it was prayers.
Okay.
It was prayers. It was just like my psalms, man. Like,
yeah,
my psalms that I was just writing to God. So I would use it a lot to relieve stress and just let it all out.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I just couldn't speak the words to someone else. So I would just write it down.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, I started off as like a spoken word artist. So like I did spoken word poetry. Then I started beatboxing. Then when I got into high school, I was doing graffiti. I was doing all the elements. I was just like the hip hop head for sure.
That's what's up.
I was really a backpacker. But so yeah, I can relate. Like sometimes when I didn't rap, I was still writing in some way, shape, or form, or like just having deep discussions. I did that a lot as a young guy, just talking with cats about deep stuff and making ideas and like inventing stuff. And so yeah, rap. I love rap, man. I've been doing it for so long, but I just love the idea of like the written word, like having thoughts and processing before you actually speak, and like writing that stuff out. And just like free expression. So you said you started writing with prayers. Now, can you kind of give us a little visual about where your testimony falls into there? Because I'm sure at that time when you started writing prayers, would you say you were a Christian at that point? Because I know you said you always had faith, but how did that transition into something a little bit more concrete for your life?
So it took about 3 years from the point where my dad had passed away. And in that 3-year period, from 2009 all the way to 2012, and 2012 is when I moved out here, like it had been like a major process and like major searching and seeking, but still doing my thing
Yeah.
on the other side.
Sure.
And I just remember in 2012, I was like at this New Year's party, and I was like, you know what, like this is it, man. Like I'm done with this.
Okay.
And I kind of just like stopped there. And then one of my old coaches, shout out to Jimmy Gonzalez, he had started a life of sin prior. And his life changed tremendously, and he started going to church and like all kinds of stuff. Like he would sacrifice coaching and stuff like that in order for him to go to church. Like he just completely surrendered his life over to God, and it was a Christian church. And I got connected with him. I was playing in a tournament for softball, and there was a rain delay, and I had already been writing music at the time. And he came up to me and he's like, hey man, I heard your song, like that's really great, I'm glad that you're talking to God, all that. And I was like, yeah, but I just feel like there's something more. Like there's something more that I need to understand.
That's what he said to you?
No, that's what I told him.
Oh, okay.
I was asking him, I was like, what do you got? And he's like, why don't you come to my house like tomorrow or whatever. And he started giving me some Bible studies.
Okay.
And teaching me Bible studies, and like my eyes were just like, oh my gosh, that, and like I felt like God was just speaking to me at the time. And then after that, I was getting ready to move out here, and he had been teaching me Bible studies.
So this is still New Mexico?
Still New Mexico.
Okay.
And 2 days or something like that before I moved out here to Arizona, I was like, I'm giving my life up to God. And then I went and I got baptized, and like I just surrendered my whole life to God at that point. And then I moved out here and basically restarted my life all the way over, because I had nobody out here. I had a roommate that I had grew up with, but like other than that, nobody.
Okay, so it was like a fresh start.
Restart, like God just let me hit the restart button.
That's crazy. Dang, so who was out here at this point? Anybody that you knew?
Nobody. My brother already had moved away.
Okay.
Nobody.
Wow. So a lot happened in New Mexico, you know, between school, your music, your testimony, your interests, your friend circle, your family. Sounds like a lot of stuff went into that, as far as, especially as a young guy, a lot of that probably shaped you and the things that you're interested in and passionate about. I appreciate you for sharing that information with us. And
Absolutely.
you know, guys, for those of you out here, you know how I do, man. We package these up in little 30-minute bundles for you guys so you can chew on them and think about some of the things. You know, you always cover a lot of information in these podcasts, and the last thing I want you to do is, one thing that's really prevalent in our community, and you see it on things like Twitter and Facebook, is cats will just, you know, enlighten you, and then you'll feel all this, you know, you see it even on Sunday sometimes. Your pastor might give you a dope sermon or something, and you're like, it's hitting me, you know, I'm feeling it. And then Monday hits, and you're just like, you know, you forgot everything that happened. So we like to package these podcasts in a way where you can really wrestle and think through some things and be like, yo, remember when he said that? Or, you know, and really reflect on these. So for your benefit, we package these up, man. We're going to jump off real quick, get yourself a nice glass of water, some soda, kick back, think for a little bit. When we get back, we're going to talk to Mendoza about Chapter 2, everything that happened when he got to Arizona, and we'll follow up then. So again, my name is Conscience. You're listening to the Conscience Hip Hop Podcast. We'll be right back in a moment.